And to discuss Turkey's humanitarian approach in its foreign policy, joining me now from Milan is Federico Donelli. He is a Turkish foreign policy expert and researcher at the University of Genoa. And from Istanbul, Helin Sarıertem. She is an associate professor at Istanbul Medeniyet University. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me. Helin, let me begin with you. How has the Turkish foreign policy evolved in the last decade, given the multiple conflicts that have raged in its neighborhood?
Well, it's been a long time that Turkey has figured out that being a soft power is a very significant and very valuable thing regarding our relations with the outside world. So we can say that Turkey has been in a great effort to improve its soft power capacity. But at the same time, we had many crises, as you have said, such as Syria, such as Libya, such as Caucasus. So there have been always very hot places, conflicts, clashes between the territories around us. So these conflicts are actually making it a little bit hard for Turkey to improve its soft power capacity, or at least to present its soft power capacity. But at the same time, there is a continuing effort from the Turkish side to continue its humanitarian aid, to continue its humanitarian understanding regarding its relations with different continents. So since the end of the 1990s, we see that Turkey has created a good initiative with Latin America, with African countries especially. So I think we have gained a very important ground on the humanitarian assistance, as Turkey is also one of the leading countries on the world regarding the development aid and humanitarian aid. So sometimes we are at the first rank, sometimes we are after the United States, but this is a very significant, very important thing for the Turkish foreign policy.
So, Federico, Turkey is currently hosting 4 million refugees, 3.5 million of them being Syrians. It had sent food supplies to Qatar when it was blockaded by its neighbors, and it also immediately launched humanitarian aid operations to Afghanistan when the Taliban took over last year. How has Turkey been reaching civilians in conflict-ridden regions, and what is the main driving force behind Turkey's foreign aid as well as its rapid response?
I think that behind the politics of Turkey and behind the humanitarian approach of Turkey, there are plenty of different aims. When we consider humanitarian diplomacy, we have to consider that this is a diplomatic tool. So besides the humanitarian aims that is important in the efforts of Turkey, we have to consider some other aims more related to a pragmatic foreign policy that Turkey has adopted during the last couple of years. And specifically, there are economic aims and political aims. Turkey is trying to modify its own identity, and Turkey is trying to present itself as a reliable and wise player in a global politics. So the biggest aim behind humanitarian diplomacy is also to present Turkey as a new global actor and to show to the world, not only to the communities that are affected by crises, as you mentioned, Afghanistan and Qatar, but also many African countries, is to present to the world that Turkey is able to act as a global player.
So, Helin, many countries have faced difficulties in balancing their geopolitical interests with humanitarian needs. Can you talk on how Turkey and other countries have had to balance between these conflicting and competing factors, let's say?
Well, for Turkey, I should underline that it's very logical for, at least for the foreign affairs experts, to understand why Turkey is giving or making so much aid for the outside countries. It is logical for the foreign affairs because we are trying to be in the great powers club. So this is one of the rules of being a great powers club member. So Turkey has created a good capacity on that. But at the same time, it has to be sure that it cannot reach everywhere. So we have to make some choices. We have to have our preferences, but we have to create a balance, as you have said. So looking at the outside world, I see that especially Syrian refugees are gaining, or at least receiving the biggest amount of foreign aid from Turkey. In the second place, I guess, Somalia comes.
Yes.
And in the third rank, Palestine comes. So these are very significant geographies, very significant either neighbors or faraway countries, which are very important for our, let's say, the geography of heart.
Yes.
Gönül coğrafyası. So it's very, very important for Turkey to try to reach everywhere, but at the same time, it's not that possible.
Okay.
For a country like Turkey to be everywhere.
So, Federico, do you believe Turkey's efforts to change the international order to a more balanced and a fair way is a realistic target? And do you think that does pay off? And what are the challenges moving forward?
Yeah, of course, the challenge is a very big challenge for Turkey as for all the other non-Western rising power. But we have to consider that the international system, the global order, is in the middle of general reshuffle. Mm-hmm. And Turkey is trying to fill the vacuum in some area. As my colleague mentioned, Turkey cannot overstretch. Turkey cannot play a biggest role of its status. But in some area, in some region, Turkey could be as an alternative to other traditional players. At the same time, the idea of Turkey is to present itself as a kind of source of inspiration and also a big sister or big brother of many countries, especially in the global south, and in some way is trying to promote a general reforms of the global governance and to claim some more equal rights for all the countries, especially the country of the global south.
Yes.
So in these terms, I think that from the diplomatic point of view, it could pay back this policy in the midterm.
So many have criticized the UN for being ineffective in solving disputes, and Turkey has often said that the world is bigger than five, referring to the UN's 5 Permanent Security Council members. So is Turkey's foreign policy centered on humanitarian aid and dialogue a direct response to that, to fill in where the UN has failed?
Well, that's correct, because the countries are creating their own alternatives to the United Nations. Looking at Turkey's preferences regarding the humanitarian and development aid, we see that Turkey prefers to one-to-one aid giving, let's say. So we prefer to directly send our aid to the outside countries, especially those that we have chosen. So yes, we sent humanitarian and development aid to at least 8 different international organizations, but at least I know that Ankara prefers to send it directly to the countries that it has targeted. Of course, Turkey's humanitarian or development aid approach is not a matter of altruism only. There are some economic and political expectations for the Turkish side as well, but Turkey has been underlining the principle of win-win, especially yes, for the countries in Africa and Latin America, which are very disadvantageous looking at the other parts of the world. So I do appreciate Turkey's approach, win-win approach, especially to those countries.
Yes.
And looking at China, yes, China is a big aid giver to these places, but it is expecting too much from these countries. Not the same things like the West expects, but different things like favoring China's policies in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in Southeast China Sea, and so on. Turkey is not expecting that much. So as Federico underlined, Turkey can create its own alternative to the other rising powers.
So, Federico, how has Turkey's geopolitical position enabled it to play the role of mediator with Ukraine, for being an example here? And is this sustainable for Türkiye to keep playing this role, mediating role between the adversaries?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, that Turkey has adopted a more pragmatic stance to the neighbors' crisis. Of course, Ukraine is the most important one nowadays, but if we check the way in which Turkey has stabilized the relationship with also some other countries like UAE or Greece, for example, it shows how Turkey wants to present itself again as a reliable partner and try to play the role of mediator. So keep open the doors with all the countries, because it knows that the best option to stabilize and to create a cooperative environment is to keep open all the channel with all the countries. Of course, this is in terms of cost benefit. We have to see if Turkey could support and could sustain this position in the long term. But for now, it seems that it paid back.
So, Helen, speaking of pragmatism, would Turkey at some point be pushed to pick sides in this conflict?
Well, if we cannot solve the issue, yes, unfortunately, Turkey will be under a greater pressure from both sides to choose one of these sides. And unfortunately, these sides can be defined as the West and the East. So it's very difficult for a country like Turkey, which is at the border of the East and the West, at the conjunction of these two geographies. Very difficult choice, but at the same time, I do believe that Turkey will continue to do its best to solve the issue on the negotiation table.
All right, Helen and Federico, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.